Hey, how's it going, everybody, and welcome to another Weird News Report. I have to talk quietly this episode because it is currently 2:05 a.m. and I don't want to wake up my entire family, but maybe I'll try to make it soothing, so it'll be a nice, relaxing sort of Weird News Report this week. Let's get started with our first article. Coronavirus lingers in penis and could cause impotence. Yeah, that's a bummer. So apparently, COVID-19 can damage blood vessels, and apparently that includes blood vessels in the penis. Potentially. Two researchers were just researching the penises, I guess, of two people that have formerly had COVID-19, who've after they have gotten COVID, had developed erectile dysfunction, right? One patient, I think, was 6 months. Previously, they had COVID-19 before the study, and the other 8 months before the study. So very long-term effect, they would think. And they researchers took samples from the two patients' penile tissues. Sorry, it's not funny. A very serious issue. It's very serious. I'm sorry. It's not funny. It's not funny. Erectile dysfunction is not funny. It's kind of funny, but you shouldn't laugh at it. Right. They took tissues, like samples from the patient's penises, and they found COVID-19 virus living inside the tissues of their penises. And one of the researchers say, well, this damage that these two guys have experienced could be permanent, which is a bit of a bummer. And the other thing I find interesting is that one of the patients didn't even have that severe of COVID-19, like a very severe case of COVID-19. He just had a rather mild case, but he still developed, long-term symptoms, erectile dysfunction, potentially. Although the researchers were saying, this is, a small study, it's just two people, and usually studies are more accurate when there's a bigger sample size. So we have to wait until there's more information. This shows that there might be some link between COVID-19 and erectile dysfunction, which is a bummer. This is what I've been saying, right? Is that even if you're young and healthy, the risks that COVID-19 poses to you isn't that small, because you can develop these long-term symptoms even with a mild case of COVID. For example, you can have damage to your heart. Having COVID can increase your risk of heart failure or other heart complications in the future. It can having COVID-19 can do damage to your lungs, and could have long-lasting scar tissue in your lungs that causes breathing problems, or it can you can have some long-term symptoms of your brain, right? You can have an increased risk due to strokes or seizures. It also might increase the risk of developing Parkinson's disease or Alzheimer's disease. So essentially, I don't think the risks that COVID-19 present to young people are actually as small as most people think. But yeah, of course there is something you can do about it. You can get vaccinated if you haven't already. And that'll decrease your risk of catching COVID, which is good. And it also protects other people, which is nice. But I think that's enough of this bummer. We've had enough COVID-19 news, I think, over the past year. Let's move on to our next, hopefully, more cheerful article. I'm sure this article will be a lot more cheerful and not gross at all. Blood drips on sleeping woman's face from ceiling, caused by rotting body on floor above. So there was a woman, and she was sleeping in her apartment, but she woke up at 4 a.m. Because, as it so happens, there was an elderly person that lived in that apartment above her, and that person happened to die right above her bedroom, and not only up just above her bedroom, but right above her ceiling fan, which was turned on at the time. So the person who had died, their bodily fluids were kind of leaking through the floor and dripping from the ceiling, and then hitting the ceiling fan and being propelled by the ceiling fan all across this woman's bedroom. So this woman woke up, and there was blood just everywhere, like across her bedroom. Now all of her, stuff in her bedroom is destroyed. Because of biohazard, you have to throw it all away, and also because it's gross. That too. And she doesn't have insurance, so she's down like a couple $1,000 just because her neighbor happened to die in an inconvenient place, like in the place that causes the most amount of damage for this woman. Wow. How inconsiderate. Okay, let's just move on. Brits urged to drink 124 pints each to help struggling pubs get back on their feet. So in Britain, the pub industry has been hit hard by COVID-19. Apparently, they have lost more than $25 billion last year due to COVID-19. Someone has worked it out that in order to make up that lost money, that every adult in the UK will need to order 124 pints of beer in the next year to make up the losses. That's a lot of beer. Or 122 glasses of wine, if you prefer wine. Or 976 packets of crisps. Or 40 roast dinners. These are all the things. Which would you choose? Would you? That's a good thing to think about. Yes, do your part, everyone. Drink as much beer as you can, if you live in Britain. Or if you don't live in Britain, I guess. Help the economy by drinking. Yeah, I'm helping the economy. Okay, let's just move on to our next article. We're getting too silly, I think. Gwyneth Paltrow's company sued after man claims vagina-scented candle exploded. Oh, boy. You know Gwyneth Paltrow, and you know her candle that's titled "This Smells Like My Vagina." Pretty. What's the word? Like pretty stunning. Not stunning because that has a good connotation. Like pretty bewildering. This candle is, and it's $75. You could buy like 75 candy bars. Yeah, so anyways, and I just found out the other day that This Smells Like My Vagina candle doesn't actually smell like Gwyneth Paltrow's vagina, which I thought is actually probably a good thing, because I'm like, well, no offense to Gwyneth Paltrow's vagina, but like, do vaginas generally have a good scent? Let me look it up. What do vaginas smell like? It's very common for vaginas to produce a tangy or sour aroma. Some compare it to the smell of fermented foods. In fact, yogurt, sourdough bread, and even some sour beer contain the same type of good bacteria that dominate most healthy vaginas. So I guess vaginas smell like yogurt? Well, good to know. But back to the story, right? This man bought this expensive candle, which doesn't smell like a vagina. I want to make that clear. But it says it smells like it. It says like it smells like a vagina, but it actually doesn't. This is very confusing to me. This man had it on his bedside table and was burning it and it had exploded and became engulfed in high flames and left a black burn ring on the bedside table, and the candle jar that was totally like burnt and like black. No one was hurt, which is good, but it could have burned down the entire building, don't you think? The thing was that so the man, that owned the candle is trying to sue the company because he could have died, probably. But the thing is that the company says on its website to not burn the candle more than 2 hours, and the man had burned the candle for 3 hours when it exploded. So the company is like, oh, this lawsuit is completely frivolous. Which is like, I don't know, maybe it is, but it doesn't seem like candles should explode. Also, I feel like there's like a joke in there somewhere about vagina candle exploding, but I can't find it. I don't think I need to find it, actually. I think you can just... Yeah, okay. Let's move on to our next story. Chinese safari park sincerely sorry for not telling public escaped leopards on the loose. In the city of Hangzhou, China, there is not a zoo, but a safari park, right? And apparently 3 of their leopards escaped. Just in general, a lot of people that are at risk from these leopards. So what does the safari park do? Well, it doesn't tell anybody, of course, because they, and I quote, don't want to cause a panic. I feel like I've heard that before a disaster happened. No, I don't know. Let's not get into that. But you think they would have... this is what happens, right? When you don't want to cause a panic. And apparently, 3 of the leopards escaped. They only found 2 of them, so one is still on the loose in Hangzhou, China. But the safari park is sincerely sorry that they didn't let anybody know that 3 leopards were on the loose. But in their defense, young leopards are less aggressive than adult leopards. So basically, it's okay. It's not okay. I was being sarcastic. It's quite worrying. But I guess I don't live in China, so that's okay. Let's move on to our next story. Mystery blob washes up on North Carolina beach. I'll just show you the picture. What do you think this is? It's so weird and gross looking. I don't think this is the type of thing you really want to be seeing, but apparently their experts have said what they think it is. They say that it could be egg sacs from a squid, which, you know what? That's actually pretty cool. Egg sacs from a squid. Although they don't say for sure that it's egg sacs, but what else would it be? Is what I'm trying to say. Okay. Well, that's kind of exciting. Let's move on to our next story. I'm not going to tell you the headline of this because I think it's better to be surprised. So there's a husband and a wife, right? And this is a real life story, right? Husband and wife. And the wife looked at her husband's phone and saw pictures of him and a young-looking woman. So the wife assumes that the husband is cheating on her and gets really angry. So she stabs her husband, right? And the husband is able to get away and snatch the knife from her, right? Before he is murdered. The craziest thing is that those pictures of the husband and this young woman, well, the young woman is actually the wife from earlier in their lives. like when she was a young woman. Now that's a plot twist if I've ever heard one. But you think you'd be able to recognize yourself, right? At least you'd be able to like look at it closely before you stab your husband. Or maybe like talk about it. Maybe like talk about it and with your husband before you stab him. Just say like, hey, what is this? And he says, oh yeah, I'm cheating on you. Then you stab him. Or maybe just don't stab your husband. Right. Don't stab your husband. That's my advice for the day. Or anyone. Unless you're sure that they're cheating on you. Let's move on to our next story. And I should say that there are things in the story that are kind of like rapey. Like things that I think could be considered rape. So if that makes you uncomfortable, then just be wary. Cheney challenger calls himself Romeo for impregnating 14-year-old when he was 18. So there's a congresswoman, or at least a former congresswoman named Liz Cheney, and she was like ousted by the Republican Party because of her, I think mostly because of her her disapproval of Donald Trump, right? Her vocal disapproval, right? So instead we have this guy running for her place, which like, oh boy, his name is Anthony Booker. And he admits that when he was 18, he impregnated a 14-year-old. And apparently when he was 19 and the girl was 15, he married the girl, which is weird. And then when the girl was 17, he divorced her. And then when she was 20, I think she committed suicide. So a very, very dark story, right? And Booker is saying, well, it's all okay, right? Because I admitted it, right? Before any stories were run. See how honest I am and open? I'll tell you how terrible I am. That's how honest I am, essentially. He said, and I quote, "It's a story when I was young. 2 teenagers, girl gets pregnant. You've heard these stories before. She was a little younger than me, so it's like the Romeo and Juliet story. Except he was 18 and she was 14. I think that could be considered rape, right? Like statutory rape. Like 4 years, that's kind of ridiculous. Like there are Romeo and Juliet laws, I think they're called, where if the age difference is small, so like an 18-year-old has sex with like a 17-year-old, I think it's legal in some states, or like something like that, right? But an 18-year-old and a 14-year-old, that's kind of outrageous. And if it's not illegal, then it's still questionable, right? Anyways, yeah, so that's who we've got running for Congress. Would I be surprised if he actually got voted in? Not really. I'd be disappointed, but not surprised at this point. Well, there you go. That's all the news that I have for you. I think I did that last week too. Maybe that could be my little closing thing. That's all the news I have for you. Good night, everybody.